But one thing that happened last week, and if you're a social media person, you would have seen this going on social media last week. I don't know if you saw it, Pat George, but there was a young man, about a 14-year-old boy, who got beat up pretty severely on the school bus.
By some bullies.
Yes. And the mother said that it was all because, I guess, a couple of weeks before he got beat up, he had actually worn a MAGA hat, a Make America Great Again, one of those red hats that President Trump made so famous during his campaign, actually worn a MAGA hat to school and then had taken some bullying because of wearing that and then actually took the hat off, tried to, not be bullied, tried to calm things down and whatnot. But apparently the damage was done. He had been identified. This is what the mother says. He had been identified as being somebody who was a supporter of President Trump and or the Make America Great Again movement. And, of course, from there, apparently the bullying started and just got worse and worse and worse. Now, this took place in Hamilton County, Florida, which is just north of Lake City and the Live Oak area. It's right on the Georgia border, just south of Valdosta.
I'm surprised that area.
Well, you know what it goes to show you.
Only takes one.
Well, first of all, why are you surprised? Let me ask you that.
I really thought that the majority of Florida, Georgia, aren't they on Trump's side?
Well, what you've got in this country, maybe the majority is, but we're not talking, 100%.
Right, that's why I said it only takes one.
Even the majority, you might be 60, 70%. You're still going to have a solid number of people that are anti-President Trump. And, what I think this kind of shows you, if you've listened to the language that's been used, and we've seen it happen over and over and over again in this country, and we see Antifa out west having these violent protests and, assaulting and battering and almost killing Andy Ngo before. So, we've seen a lot of evidence of this violence coming from, and I don't know if we want to call it the left or not, but violence coming from the left or violence coming from people who are against President Trump. And then you look at the language of the politicians like Maxine Waters, like Nancy Pelosi and others who have said, don't let these people be comfortable in public, go out and confront them, do whatever it takes to let them know they're not accepted here, et cetera, et cetera. And the language has been language of violence. We even had Greta Thunberg say that the leaders of the world ought to be put up against the wall, and then shot. Of course, she backed off on that. So, oh, no, that's just a turn of phrase in Sweden. We say put up against the wall means be held accountable. Yeah, right. That means put up against the wall and shot. And everybody knows what it means. And you can't unsay those kind of things. And that's what these people say. They say, if you don't agree with me, if you don't believe what I believe, and you don't want to handle these problems in the way that I want you to handle these problems, then you're deserving of violent attack. And then we see that repeated over and over and over again. And that's the kind of mentality, at least it appears, that led to this poor 14-year-old boy being severely beaten on the school bus, and he wound up in the hospital.
Well, apparently he doesn't have the right to wear that hat.
Is that where we're at in this country?
I guess so.
Well, I don't accept that. I don't agree with that, and I don't accept that. That's wrong. He has the right to freedom of speech. It's one of his fundamental rights. It's enshrined in our Constitution. If none of that matters anymore, then we don't have a country anymore. Period. The end. Then the country's going to break down into conflict with each other, which is not what we're about. We're supposed to have a civil society where we're free to say what we want to say. We're free to have our own opinions. We try to discuss things. We try to do it rationally. We try to win the other side over to our position. But anyway, if you go and you look this story up, and again, if you haven't seen it, there was a young man in Hamilton County, Florida, who was beaten very severely on the bus. The young man's mother says that it had to do with him having worn a MAGA hat to school. Now, the attack actually occurred in late November, like the 21st to the 22nd. I don't remember the exact day, but it was one of those 2 days. And what else I thought was interesting is you have this kind of attack, and then the superintendent of the schools comes out with a statement.
Don't say it. You're only going to make it matter.
Look. The guy is more concerned, the superintendent, and I was trying to pull that up here, but it's not coming up because I was going to read to you part of the statement. But I'll tell you what, he is more concerned about the fact, he says he's very disappointed that the school district has been portrayed in the way that it's been portrayed. What about the student who got beaten up? What about the conduct of the school employees on the bus? What about, there's any number of things that you could be disappointed about, but he's more concerned with the image that the school district has, which apparently is the image of not protecting its students if they don't agree with certain political positions. So, I think we're going to see more and more of that as time goes on. I think it's really a sad development, and I feel bad for this young man who got beaten up. But if you haven't seen that video, you got to get out there and find it. You probably can only find it on Twitter or some other social media because the mainstream media won't report that. When the Covington kids were up in D.C. and they thought they had, this storyline that they approved of, where the Covington boys stood in the way and blocked this Native American tribal elder, Vietnam veteran hero of this country. Remember that nonsense?
Oh, yes.
They couldn't stop running with that. That's all they could talk about. And it turned out they were totally wrong about all that. In fact, they're in the process of being sued, and they are being sued. It survived a motion to dismiss for defaming that young man in particular. But now we've got something going the other direction, a story that could be national news. I mean, if that's national news, somebody stands in front of someone else on the National Mall, he stood in front of someone else. Okay, well, if that can make national news, and I think a student getting beaten up on the bus, allegedly for supporting President Trump, also could make national news. But you won't hear about it.
No.
Guaranteed, you will not hear about it at all. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.